Hello everyone, my name is Anatoly Lubarsky. I've been a software developer for 20 years and last decade I'm independent game developer. My company name is X2Line. I created games like Baby Adopter, Little Girl Magic, Orange 3, mostly published on mobile as free games, but also on HTML5 platforms and social networks. On each platform there are millions of downloads of my primary games. This talk will focus on free games for Apple and Android and what is the scope of last 10% of work before you launch on mobile. Let's say you've already developed your game that's working fine and you like it and looking forward to publish it on a mobile platform. People say that last 10% of game development before the launch takes 90% of the work. What happens in the last 10%? What is going on? I would say that for free games on mobile, the real development just starts after the launch. Sometimes it may take 100 iterations after the launch before you feel the game is ready to play. With that in mind, we need to define the scope of the last 10% before the launch. This includes polish, testing optimizations, deciding what platform to launch first, and so on. As a side note, I found that the best strategy is to launch on one of the mobile platforms, then receive feedback, make changes after the launch, and only then launch on the second platform. We need to take into account also things not related to hands-on development. For example, game title. What's the name of your game? Maybe it is already taken. You may find someone has released a game with the same name just a week before your launch date. Is the name trademarked? For example, you can't use with friends in your game name because it is this phrase is trademarked by Zynga. I've seen many people release and promote their game and it is titled like something with friends. Then these developers get feedback that they can't use it and have to rename it, and it is much harder to rename after the game is already released and promoted under its original name. Another thing, you need to think through about your KPIs and how you are going to measure your KPIs. What is a KPI? KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. In order to measure KPIs, you need initial number of users, maybe several thousands of users, to be able to measure your key performance indicators. You need to prepare analytics solutions for that. There are some universal KPIs for all games. For example, for free mobile games, the number one most important key performance indicator is user retention. For example, day 1 retention and day 7 retention. Day 1 retention is the percent of users who come to play your game the next day after they install and play the game for the very first time. Day 1 retention is usually the number one indicator of game quality related to gameplay. It is also the best indicator of first-time user experience. And this is why the initial scenario should be the main focus of QA. What is the initial scenario? This is the very first play after the download. First-time experience should have the least possible amount of obstacles or intermediate screens and take users straight into the game. If you have a tutorial, it should have look and feel of the actual game. Some numbers. Top 10 games on each mobile platforms has about 10% day 1 retention. it means that 40% of users who play the game for the very first time come back to play the next day, and also this game have 20% day 7 retention. This means that after a week, still 20% of users who downloaded the game still playing it. These are excellent numbers. 30% day 1 retention is also very good, and 20% is also good. But if you launch your game and you see 5-8% numbers for your day 1 retention, that means there is something wrong with the game and maybe you need to do a bigger design. What can help with user retention? Implementing social features helps a lot with user retention, and that should be done before the launch. The option, for example, you can add an option to share screenshot of the game on social networks from within the game. Implement leaderboards and achievements. Reward users for playing day after day. These just few examples of social features that may help with retention. We need to plan ahead before launch. Maybe create a small advertising campaign to get initial number of users, get 50, 100 first reviews, release an update, reply to reviews, address all feedback, and work on improving these retention KPIs. Of course, you need to define and add additional KPIs specific for your game. Most common analytics tools used by developers are Google Analytics, Firebase, Facebook Analytics. It is now discontinued. And lately I was using Microsoft App Center, which I think is the most simple and easiest to implement for mobile. Your store page should grab people in the first few seconds. It's important. However, we need always keep in mind day 1 retention and not attract audience that would uninstall the game immediately after install. This will be detrimental to retention KPIs. The icon should look attractive, but keep in mind that we can always improve it later after the launch. It is very important to localize your game store page. That means translate all texts into a few major languages: French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, to start with. Screenshots are very important. Screenshots should be of good quality. Some developers add labels, text over screenshots, or split a single UI across a few screenshots to make it bigger and stand out and make certain features more understandable for potential users. We need to think what is the most important. Two first sentences of description are the most important. First two screenshots of all screenshots are the most important because they are the most visible. And first 3-4 seconds of game trailer is the most important because this is when users stop viewing your trailer. It is important also to build a community around your game and need start doing that early in the development. You need to create a website, maybe start a Facebook page or Discord channel or a Twitter account. Get your friends and family involved. It is always good to showcase your game and get initial feedback. Alternatively, you can post your game footage to gaming communities. Sometimes it is better for the game to get some harsh feedback from a gaming community to be able to improve before the launch and maximize your chances after the launch. It always helps if you build an email list on influencers or important players from your previous games to be ready to pitch your game before or immediately after the launch. It always helps that players not only play but become also a part of the larger community. It improves the KPIs, especially users' retention. It also helps when you already have audience and followers on your page or from previous game on maybe Facebook page or Twitter account. Loyal users usually ask about your plans for the next game, and you can start announcing about your new game long before it's ready for launch. Also, need to create a feedback and support online presence where users can share their ideas for the game and submit bugs. You can use tools like Google Groups or User Voice. It is important to understand your target audience and take into account certain restrictions that come with it. A good example is Designed for Families program on Google Play. All games that may have appeal to children, either in their game content or a store page. From Google's perspective, these games should be compliant with additional restrictive policies and otherwise will not pass review even though human target audience might be more mature, 18 plus. Some example of these policies are that no third-party SDK is allowed, no analytics SDK is allowed, including Google's own analytics solutions. If the game is in the Designed for Families program, each update review can take a week, while regular games updates can take a few hours for review. From one hand, you need to make annoying changes to be compliant with these additional policies. From the other hand, this subset of Google Play Store is much less saturated and it is more curated, and you may gain competitive advantage and reach more users once the game is accepted. We also need to write and maintain a privacy policy relevant to specific platform, not some generic one, and be able to change it when platform's policy changes. There is a less known fact about Apple platform that on Apple you can also send an email to marketing team requesting to make your game feature. It is possible to do before the launch and before each update, although the chances are usually low. As I mentioned previously, with the day one retention key performance indicator in mind, we need to plan the QA before the launch. The main focus of QA should be first-time user experience, the initial scenario. Another thing is need to take into account users with low-end devices. You need to test the cheapest Android phone because that is what the general audience of Google Play users use. On cheaper devices, your game might look uglier, but you need to make sure it looks okay and it is playable. So that's one of the main points that we need to concentrate on first-time user experience and check it, test it extensively. And the main thing to keep in mind is day one retention is the main key performance indicator. Thank you.